Most people assume that surviving a narcissistic woman requires strength, emotional toughness, dominance, or the ability to withstand pressure. That assumption is precisely why so many intelligent, capable people end up broken and confused. What actually determines survival is not strength in the conventional sense, but self-awareness. The kind of awareness that allows you to observe your own emotions without being ruled by them, and to see another person clearly without projecting fantasies onto them. A narcissistic woman does not attach to who you are. She attaches to what you unconsciously provide. Validation, emotional labor, identity reinforcement. The person who survives is the one who begins to notice these dynamics as they happen. They recognize when admiration turns into obligation, when affection becomes leverage, and when confusion is being used as a tool. This is not intuition alone, it is psychological literacy. Carl Jung spoke often about the danger of the unconscious. When you are unaware of your own unmet needs, your fear of abandonment, or your desire to be chosen, you become highly predictable, and predictability is exploitable. The narcissistic personality thrives not on power, but on unexamined patterns in others. Self-aware individuals pause where others react. They question feelings instead of obeying them. They do not rush to fix tension or restore harmony at the cost of self-respect. This inner distance gives them something rare: choice. And once choice exists, manipulation weakens. Survival, then, is not about becoming colder or harder. It is about becoming clearer. When you understand yourself, you stop mistaking emotional intensity for truth and attention for love. And here is the quiet truth worth reflecting on, Isis. The moment you see clearly, you are no longer easy to control, and that is where survival truly begins. Once self-awareness begins to develop, something even more decisive follows: emotional independence. This is where many people falter. A narcissistic woman does not primarily seek love or partnership. She seeks self-regulation. She uses others to stabilize her self-image, her mood, her sense of importance. If you become the source of that regulation, you become trapped, not by force, but by emotional dependency. Emotional independence does not mean emotional coldness. It means you are no longer outsourcing your sense of worth, direction, or peace to another person. You can feel deeply without being dependent. You can care without collapsing. This distinction is subtle, but it is everything. The narcissistic dynamic only works when another person needs the narcissist to feel whole, seen, or secure. Carl Jung warned that when we do not develop a solid inner center, we search for it outside ourselves, in people, relationships, or approval. That search creates vulnerability. The narcissistic woman intuitively senses this. She recognizes who is hungry for reassurance, who fears abandonment, who feels incomplete alone. And once that need is detected, control follows naturally. The emotionally independent person disrupts this process without confrontation. They do not beg for consistency. They do not chase clarity. They do not negotiate their value. When affection is withdrawn, they feel the loss, but they do not lose themselves. This is deeply unsettling to a narcissistic personality because there is nothing to hook into. Independence restores balance. It allows you to choose connection rather than cling to it. And when choice replaces need, the entire dynamic shifts. Manipulation starves when dependency ends. Here is the thought worth carrying forward, S's. When you stop needing someone to complete you, you quietly take back your power, and no narcissist can survive there. Dofif. After emotional independence is established, a subtle but decisive shift occurs. You stop trying to win, and you start trying to SSC. This is where clarity becomes more powerful than strength. Many people believe they can argue, reason, or expose a narcissistic woman into change. What they don't realize is that confrontation feeds the very dynamic they are trying to escape. Strength invites resistance. Clarity dissolves illusion. A narcissistic woman thrives in emotional fog, mixed signals, shifting narratives, circular conversations. When you respond emotionally, you enter her terrain. But clarity operates on a different level. It asks quiet questions. What is consistently happening here? What patterns repeat? What am I feeling after these interactions? Not what am I being told to feel. These questions are disarming because they are internal. They cannot be debated or manipulated. Carl Jung emphasized that consciousness is not about control, but illumination. Once something is made conscious, it loses its unconscious power over us. The moment you clearly name the dynamic without anger, without accusation, you are no longer psychologically entangled in it. You see the game without needing to announce that you see it. This is why silence becomes more effective than explanation. You stop defending your perceptions. You stop correcting distortions. You simply adjust your behavior according to reality rather than hope. Clarity leads to alignment, and alignment naturally reduces exposure to harm. The narcissistic woman may escalate, provoke, or attempt to pull you back into emotional chaos. But clarity does not react, it recalibrates. It chooses distance where confusion once existed. It chooses consistency where volatility once felt exciting. And this is the closing truth to reflect on as. When you stop trying to overpower manipulation and start seeing it clearly, you exit the battlefield, and that is where real freedom begins. Once clarity is established, the next transformation is quiet but unmistakable. Boundaries replace arguments. Most people misunderstand boundaries as confrontations, statements delivered with force, emotion, or ultimatums. In reality, boundaries are not weapons, they are us positions. And this is precisely why they unsettle a narcissistic woman far more than anger ever could. A narcissistic woman is accustomed to emotional engagement. Even conflict reassures her that she still has access to your energy. What disrupts her sense of control is not resistance, but inaccessibility. Boundaries, when calmly enforced, remove emotional supply without drama. You stop explaining why something hurts you. You stop negotiating basic respect. You simply adjust your availability. Carl Jung observed that individuation, the process of becoming a whole, integrated person, requires the courage to tolerate disapproval. This is where boundaries truly live. The moment you no longer fear being misunderstood, disliked, or painted as the villain, the narcissistic dynamic weakens. Control depends on your emotional reaction. Boundaries end that dependency. The survivor does not announce their boundaries repeatedly. They demonstrate them through consistent behavior. If a line is crossed, access is reduced. If manipulation appears, engagement disappears. This consistency is deeply destabilizing to a narcissistic personality because there is nothing to push against. No emotional leverage, no reward for provocation. What makes boundaries so powerful is their neutrality. There is no anger to argue with, no guilt to exploit. Just a quiet message. This no longer reaches me. Over time, this forces a choice: respect the boundary or lose access entirely. And here is the final thought worth carrying with you. The moment you stop fighting for understanding and start standing in your limits, control dissolves and peace quietly takes its place. Essa, after boundaries are established, something surprising happens. The need to be understood begins to fall away. This is one of the most difficult shifts for thoughtful, empathetic people. They believe that if they can just explain themselves clearly enough, if they choose the right words, the right tone, the narcissistic woman will finally see them. But this belief quietly keeps the cycle alive. A narcissistic woman does not misunderstand you by accident. She misunderstands you by design. Understanding would require empathy, accountability, and emotional reciprocity, qualities that threaten her internal structure. So every explanation you offer becomes material to distort, minimize, or weaponize. The more you clarify, the more confused you feel. Carl Jung spoke about the danger of projecting meaning onto those who cannot receive it. When you seek understanding from someone unwilling to meet you psychologically, you abandon yourself in the process. The survivor realizes that being understood is not the same as being validated, and neither is required for self-respect. This is where a quiet maturity emerges. You stop narrating your inner world to someone committed to misinterpreting it. You stop defending your intentions. You stop correcting false assumptions, not because you have nothing to say, but because you finally recognize who you are speaking to. Letting go of the need to be understood is not resignation, it is liberation. It allows you to reclaim your energy and redirect it toward people and environments capable of mutual recognition. Your sense of reality stabilizes. You no longer measure your worth by whether someone acknowledges your truth. The narcissistic dynamic weakens here because confusion was never the problem. Attachment to being seen was. Once that attachment dissolves, manipulation has nothing left to work with. And this is the thought to take with you. When you stop asking the wrong person to understand you, you finally begin to understand yourself, and that changes everything. At the final stage of this process, the focus shifts entirely. You no longer ask how to survive the narcissistic woman. You ask who you are becoming because of the experience. This is where most people miss the point. They remain locked in a hidden competition, wanting closure, justice, or some form of moral victory. But the person who truly survives chooses something far more radical: growth over winning. A narcissistic woman is trapped in repetition. The same conflicts, the same cycles, the same emotional scripts replay endlessly. If you stay focused on proving your worth, exposing her behavior, or making her regret the loss, you remain psychologically tied to that loop. Survival ends when the loop ends, not when it is defeated, but when it is outgrown. Carl Jung described this as individuation, the process of turning suffering into consciousness. Pain, when examined honestly, becomes instruction. You begin to see what the relationship revealed about your own patterns, where you gave, where you ignored intuition, where you confused intensity with meaning. This is not self-blame, it is self-recovery. The survivor redirects energy inward. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" they ask, "What is this shaping me into?" This question changes everything. It transforms resentment into insight and loss into direction, while the narcissistic woman searches endlessly for the next source of supply. The survivor builds a life that no longer requires one. Growth is quiet. It does not announce itself. It shows up as better choices, stronger alignment, and an internal stability that no longer depends on external validation. And in that stability, the narcissistic dynamic has no place to land. So here is the final reflection to carry forward. Ekes, when you stop trying to win against someone and start evolving beyond them, you don't just survive, you transcend. Enzes.